What's up again there, guys? Brian here at 3TR, and welcome to a much more expanded episode of the People's Questions, episode 249. Right before Christmas starts, we got a really much larger episode of questions with actually probably a solid number of newbies, so I'll be sure to welcome them all to the channel for the first time. We're starting off real simple with the first question from a regular of mine who always likes to go by the name of Mr. Matt Cruz, and you want to know who would win in a fight between Nathan Drake and Indiana Jones. As much as I'd like to say Indiana Jones, I would probably say Nathan Drake would win. He's a much more, I'd say, experienced combatant, and he's a lot more deadlier. You have to remember that Indiana Jones can handle himself, but at the end of the day, he's a school professor. So I don't really think he has as much experience of exploring and actually directly combating enemies as someone like Nathan Drake is, who's been doing this for years and years and years. So I would probably put my money on Nathan Drake. Your next question comes from Cisco Scarpino, and you want to know if I had to distribute Metal Gear, Silent Hill, and Castlevania between Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, which one would I pick in general? Okay, well that's easy. Metal Gear Solid's going to Sony, Silent Hill is going to Microsoft, and Castlevania is going to Nintendo. The reason Metal Gear is going to Sony is because really up until, let's say, maybe Metal Gear, I think that Sony would appreciate its storytelling, and Hideo Kojima has a very, very good relationship with Sony, as we all know. I'd probably put Silent Hill on Microsoft just to give it a little bit of different tempo, because Microsoft is really only known for its online shooter games, so I think adding Silent Hill might give it a little bit more variety. And I would probably put Castlevania on Nintendo, since obviously that's where the Castlevania franchise first started, especially if you go from Castlevania's 1 on the first original Nintendo system, entertainment system, going all the way to Super Castlevania on the Super Nintendo console. So that's why I would pick those consoles. Next question comes from Tanuki Player, and you want to know, have you ever played Gravity Rush Remastered on PlayStation 4, and if so, what are my thoughts on it? No, I've never actually played Gravity Rush on the PlayStation 4. It looked decent, but I just never got around to playing it. Next question comes from Mr. Wong, and you want to know, what is my opinion on Life is Strange? I don't really like it. I haven't played it. But it just looks like the type of game I'm not really interested into. I've seen the movie The Butterfly Effect, and it kind of seemed to play out a little bit like that. One of my closest friends really loves the game, but I personally don't. It's just not my type of storytelling game. It just doesn't really interest me. So, if you like Life is Strange, that's fine, but it's just not for me. Next question comes from Michael Beeland, and you want to know, which Metal Gear Solid game do I think is the most needed of a remake or remaster? Oh, that's an easy one. The first two original Metal Gear games, Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. They need a remastering big time. In fact, I believe a few years ago, the first game was actually being somewhat remade by this kind of indie studio, but for whatever reason, Konami decided to pull the plug on that. Which is a shame, because I'm telling you, there's a number of story elements, at least in the second game, I think they need to change. I absolutely hate how the final confrontation between Big Boss and Solid Snake plays out. I think it's stupid that the greatest soldier in the history of warfare, Big Boss, gets defeated by a rookie agent using a can of hairspray and a lighter. That is stupid. That's always been stupid. You gotta give me a much more badass fight. I know they could come up with something. The next question comes from JDS4696, and you want to know, do you think that Dylan Roof resembles Leon S. Kennedy? I have no idea who Dylan Roof is, so I can't really say. Next question comes from Joe O'Colit. Hope I said that right. And you want to know, you've been hearing rumors of a Darksiders 3 in the making. Do I think there's any truth to that? I don't know, and I don't really care. I've never really been a Darksiders fan. I think I played the first one, but I didn't really finish it. I didn't even bother with Darksiders 2, so heck, if they are making a Darksiders 3, that's completely above me, because I don't really care if they're making one. Next question comes from HydroGablood881, and you want to know, among the cast of Final Fantasy VII, who would make the best Jedi and who would make the worst Jedi, in my opinion? I think Aerith would probably make the best Jedi, especially her strong connection to the light, which would make her a very, very powerful, I would say, Jedi Consular. Not so much a Guardian, but she would definitely be very, very strong with the Force. Possibly might even be able to go Jedi Master. In terms of the worst, we'll stick to the main cast of characters. Be honest, I think the worst Jedi would be Wolf 13. Red 13, simply because he's a wolf dog. So, not really sure how he's gonna use the Force or fight. He's gonna carry the lightsaber in his mouth. Yeah, so I think Red 13 would probably be the worst Jedi. Just in a practical sense. So that would be my choice. The next question comes from Thigh-Napping Sniper. Welcome back. And you had probably the most complicated question of the episode. You want to know, if I could make a mainstream Star Wars movie about stormtroopers and the Empire's last stand against the rebellion, what planet would I put the last stand on, and how would the characters feel about the war and Empire during the course of the film? So basically, you want me to direct or make a movie about the Empire and its last stand. Well, you have to understand something. The Empire didn't necessarily have a last stand, because, as you know, a good portion of its forces simply transferred into the New Order. So the Empire was never ever on it never got to a point where it was on its last stand, or it was in its last set of resources. The rebellion could never have gotten that strong. Just because the Death Star was blown up twice doesn't mean the Empire was completely crippled. Sure, they just lost a good portion of their reserve forces, but you have to remember, they had a pretty massive fleet that spread across the galaxy. It never got to the point where it was really serious in any real trouble. So a Last Stand movie would be kind of unlikely. But if I had to pick a place to put a battle like that, I'm not sure. Tatooine's too cliche. Naboo's not a good planet. Coruscant, you don't want to put it in the middle of a city. You don't want to put it in the center of a republic. Mustafar is a bad idea. Can't really do it in Camino. I guess maybe Geonosis. It's a big enough place that you could have a gigantic battle, and it'd be interesting to have the final stand of the Empire fight where the Clone Wars started. So I think that have some symbolic meaning to that. But yeah, in terms of the characters, I don't really know how you make the Empire sympathetic. I mean, if they're the bad guys, how do you root for them? I mean, in terms of Last Stand, you kind of want to root for the underdog. So it's kind of an odd concept. The next question comes from Eston Band Leon, and you want to know, do I think that Final Fantasy 15 would have been better with the original plot of Versus 13? Well, I'm not entirely sure what the main plot for Versus 13 was going to be. I know that there was a couple of character switches, but as far as I know, as much as I tried to keep track of it during its production over the past 10 years, I kind of lost track of what the original plot was going to be, so I can't really say if it would have been better than 15. I think that 15 was okay for what it was. I just think that it had a very difficult time with pacing. There were a number of characters that did not even get nearly as much screen time as they needed to really be established characters. And just a number of story elements that just didn't really make sense by the end. Now, I know that they just uploaded an update patch for it, so I'm playing through it again on New Game Plus, and hopefully if they did add a number of scenes or some DLC content comes out, that might be able to flesh out some more characters and add some more detail that might actually enhance the game's story. But in terms of comparing it to the plot for Versus 13, I can't really say. The next question comes from Matthew Mr. M. Keller, and you want to know, if I had to learn from one writer, who would I choose between these options? Casey Hudson, the Mass Effect Trilogy, Hideo Kojima, Metal Gear Solid, or Ken Levine, Bioshock? You're kidding, right? Of course I'd go with Hideo Kojima. There ain't anybody even close. Look, Mass Effect is cool and all, but the last game kind of fucked it up for everyone, so we don't even know where Andromeda is going to go from there. And as much as people love Bioshock, after the first one, I think we can all agree that both 2 and Infinite are vastly inferior. The only franchise that has stayed consistently excellent is the Metal Gear Solid franchise? Minus that bullshit Phantom Pain, which we can all admit is not really a Metal Gear Solid game, and it wasn't even really Kojima's game to begin with because Konami had completely butchered the shit out of the game to the point where it was completely unrecognizable. So, I was sick of Hideo Kojima, no doubt. Now, the last two questions of the episode, I believe, are the two newbies of the episode, so welcome. And I believe you two actually sent in a number of different questions. So before I begin with the questions you guys sent, just know that because you sent more than one, I typed in the answer to your other two questions in the comments of the last video. So if you're looking for the answer for those questions, just be sure to check the comment section for the last episode of people's questions, because that's where they are. But for the one question that you guys did send, the first one comes from Uprising versus Capcom Games, which is a pretty interesting name. And you want to know, if I were the CEO of BioWare, who would I choose to be my publisher? I don't care, as long as you make me money. I really don't think CEOs really care who is your publisher, as long as they make their money back and make a profit. So that's how I would think. And the next and last question of the episode comes from JessieCom03. And you want to know, or JessCom03, sorry. You want to know, do I think the gaming industry has way too many shooter games? Games like Mass Effect, Gears of War, and Uncharted, etc. No, I don't think there's too many shooters, because you have to remember that there are much more variety of games. There are racers, there's flight simulators, there's VR games, there's platformers, there's puzzle games. I think that it might seem that there's too many shooters. That's because in this day and age, shooters are the more popular, it's the most popular genre of gaming. But just because it's popular doesn't mean there's too much of it. So no, I certainly don't think there's too many shooter games. I mean, heck, I have plenty of games where you're not shooting anybody. I mean, there's plenty of them out there. And with that, those are all the questions that you guys sent in for this episode. I'd like to thank all of you guys, including the two last newbies, for joining this episode and making this episode even possible. If you guys have any more questions you would like me to answer in next week's episode, I believe 250, which that's going to be big, be sure to type your questions in the comments down below, but make sure you get them into me before next Wednesday, before I start filming this. And make sure you only picked one question per person, because it makes things a lot simpler. And like always, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas.